You guys have hit over $50 million in revenue.
We became the biggest perfume brand at Walmart. Selling perfume online is not the easiest thing in the world. You're going to have a hard time scaling that business. But lo and behold, the whole inventory sold out in less than 24 hours. We're doing Machine Gun Kelly, that his perfume is coming out, because all of a sudden, you're making twice the money.
Hello, and welcome to the DTC Daily Podcast. Every week, we interview some of the best e commerce founders and dive deep into their key growth drivers, uncovering actionable insights that you can implement in your business. But before we jump into today's conversation, a quick thank you to our friends at Saral. Most brands get influencer marketing wrong. They think paying a creator for a single post will spark a sales spike. That simply doesn't work. Successful brands like Graza, Obvi, and Hexclad are forging genuine partnerships. And that's where Saral comes in. It's your go-to platform for partnering with the right influencers, tracking results, and managing everything in one place. Book a demo at getsaral.com/demo, mention us, and get an extended free trial exclusive for our listeners.
Hey Sergio, welcome to the DTC Daily Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Sergio, you've grown your business in the last 6 years to from zero to over $1 million. You guys have hit over $50 million in revenue. But before we jump into how you got there, could you tell our audience a little bit about Dossier and what you guys do?
Sure. Dossier is a perfume company, and the North Star of the company was always how can we make great fragrances affordable for the 99% and not just the lucky few who can spend, call it 150, $200 plus at Sephora to buy a luxury scent. So what we did is that we took all the elements that make a luxury scent fantastic, which is super high quality ingredients, great craftsmanship, made in France, and we remove all the fluff. So we have a nice elegant bottle. We don't have a super fancy bottle. We don't have super fancy packaging. We don't have megastars endorsing the brand. So we wanted to go back to what perfumery should be about, which is actually, the liquid in the bottle, the actual fragrance. So that's always been the North Star of Dossier. We launched Dossier in 2019. We started off with our Impressions collections, which are perfumes inspired by luxury scents that you know and love. And then over the years, a couple of things happened. So we started online only in the US only, and then we expanded internationally. So we're now present in Mexico, Canada, Europe, and Australia. And in 2022, we launched our partnership with Walmart. We became the biggest perfume brand at Walmart. We're distributed in all their 4,000 doors. And we just launched Target a week ago, also in all their doors. And that's, the initial numbers look really good. So we're really happy.
Okay, going back to where it all started back in 2019, I believe you were working in a bank. You were a banker at that time?
At that time, no, but I was a banker at some point in my life, yes. So years and years ago, I came to the US to study. I did an MBA, and then I moved to New York to work in banking. So I worked at Deutsche Bank for a couple of years, and then after a couple of years, I quit and decided to launch a first e-commerce company, which was in the hair care space, and it was cool. We made something out of nothing. And we had quite a little success with a very little capital that my partner and I started with. After that, I sold my shares to my partner. That company still exists today. After that, I started a skincare company. That went nowhere. And then I was thinking about my next steps, and that's how the idea of Dossier came along right off that skincare company.
Awesome. And okay, so going back to once the idea came, what were the steps you took, to kind of, you know, look at that idea and actually convert that into a business?
Yeah, I had been doing this for a while when I started Dossier, so I had a pretty clear roadmap of what needed to be done. It all starts with a great product. That's, you can be the best marketer in the world. If you don't have a great product, you're not going to go very far. So the first piece was finding a great perfumer to work with and to create these awesome scents. And that was the most difficult piece because the perfume world is still a little closed up and opaque. So it wasn't easy finding the right partner. But once we found that right partner, that was the key unlock. So first thing, focus on the product, just making sure that we have a good product to start with. And then just getting the basics right, as simple as having a website, making sure you have an email distribution list set up, just getting those basics set up, setting up your first ads, sending your first products to influencers. And the idea there was, is somebody going to buy my product? I mean, I think that when you start a company, that's the most important piece. You don't have to go crazy in terms of spending money. The first thing you need to understand is anybody interested in this? So that's what we did, is just making sure we have that good product, not spending years and years developing it because you want to go to market quickly and get the feedback of the market and understanding if somebody's going to buy the product. So that was the roadmap, in a nutshell. And then obviously you get some much more into details. And turns out that people were interested in the product, and you started iterating from there. You built the website, you had nicer visuals, you launched new perfumes, etc., etc.
Uh, so I want to understand in a little more detail those early days, right? What did you do to get that initial traction going? What was the focus on at that time to get those early customers and to get their feedback? What were the main channels that you were focusing on at that time?
You know, I feel like we're always attracted to what I call shiny new objects and new cool things to do. But ultimately, what I found out is that the basics work. Just get the basics right. We talk about the product, that's the most important piece. And then you know what? Do meta ads, do Google ads, do influence. Those things, and it's nothing revolutionary, but it works. And that's how you get those first sales in. Your objective in the very beginning is making sure that somebody's going to take out a credit card and pay for your product. That's really your number one mission, is converting those initial clients and getting that initial traction. So we found out that the basics work well, and that's what we focused on. We put together a bunch of ads on Meta. We put together some Google ads, not that much Google initially, a lot of Meta in the beginning. And then we did a lot of influence. And ultimately, when you think about the nature of the product, the perfume, selling perfume online is not the easiest thing in the world. So we felt that we needed the help of influencers to explain the product and do a video about the product, not just show photos, because that's not enough. You needed somebody to talk about the perfume and talk about the emotions that they felt and talk about how it smelled. And that's really how we got the initial traction, is making sure we focus on the basics. We had a decent looking website. It wasn't amazing by all means. But then obviously you started iterating, you start working on the brand. And then in terms of feedback, we launched with a collection of 20 cents. And a couple of interesting happens there. Number one, my bias, my preconception was that American men don't usually wear perfume. So our collection was heavily skewed female. Turns out that assumption was wrong. Actually, men were quite interested in our product. So, and when we developed the new perfumes, we started rebalancing that collection. Number two, we started with our impressions collection, as I mentioned to you, and we started with impressions of very popular scents, very popular perfumes. But turns out that people also aspiring to smell and to wear much more niche perfumes. So that's how we started working on more niche brands and doing impressions of more niche brands like the Tom Fords of the world, the Le Labos of the world. And that was a big unlock for us too, when we launched that collection. And then the third thing is we went from heavily skewed female, more male, but also a lot of unisex perfumes, because that was a big trend for us. So that's how we started, and that's how we tried to respond to the market feedback as quickly as possible. But those were the trends that we quickly observed. And then, we went from 20 perfumes in our initial collection to, well, today we have about over 150. But we increased, like in 2 years, if I remember well, we went from 20 to 80. So we worked on a lot of new perfumes to bring to the market because that's the other thing that we noticed. And speaking of feedback, is that initially we thought that value was the end game. We want to provide great value to the customer. Turns out that value is just a means to another end, and that end is discovery. People want to discover great scents. People want to wear different scents and have a wardrobe of scents, not just wear the same perfume all the time. And it's kind of hard to do when, if you want to buy three perfumes, you got to fork out $500. So that was the unlock for our customers, is that they could finally have that wardrobe of scents that they wanted, and they could explore this wonderful world of perfumery.
Sergio, you made some very interesting points, and I just want to try and go a little deeper into this. You mentioned that you guys started with about 20 perfumes and then eventually scaled to 80. But at some point, obviously, you would have realized that there is product market fit. And one of the things that I've realized, speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs, that they really struggle to kind of identify or get those early signs that there is product market fit or there isn't. They need to pivot. What were some of the early signs for you that told you, okay, there is product market fit, I need to start scaling?
For me, I didn't struggle that much because I mean, I guess I had two previous experiences
Yeah.
in the e-commerce world. One that did pretty well, not phenomenally well, but did pretty well. The other one was a failure. So when I saw the initial traction, after I'd say a month or two, I knew we had something. And if you look at simple metrics like, I don't know, take CAC for example, or conversion, but take CAC, customer acquisition costs. You know, if your CAC is going to be so we sell our products between $29 and $49. People tend to buy 2 to 3 products, so your AOV is 75, roughly. Well, if your CAC is 300, it's gonna be it's gonna be tough. You're gonna have a hard time scaling that business. But the CAC was high, higher than it is today. But when your initial CAC is, call it, I don't know, 80 or 100, and you've just launched 2 weeks ago, you know that you'll figure things out. So the conversion rate was decent. The influencer reaction was good. I don't know. It just, I saw pretty quickly that there was something there, and we could make something happen. The cost of our product initially was very high, but they're going to bring that down with scale, being smarter about your supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's not something that I particularly struggle with. Those are the signs that I saw. It's just the market was enthusiastic, the reviews were good. All these signs that I had seen before, or not seen before in business that didn't work out, were there.
And then once you started seeing these signs, okay, that these are working, that you've got product market fit. You said you guys went and launched 80 fragrances from 20 fragrances. You reached 80. How did the marketing change, or was it just about doubling down? Was it about just pouring in more money and just scaling that out?
Initially, it really was about doubling down. Okay, so this is working. We're increasing our collection. We went from 20 to 80 to 150 today. So that increased quite a lot. So initially, it really was, to your point, about just doing more of the same and just making sure that we kept all these important metrics under control. So I'm very focused on the margins. I'm very focused on unit economics. That's super important to me. I look at those an unhealthy amount of times over the day. So, but I like to keep really focused on these things. That's what makes or break a business. So initially, it really was about doubling down and making sure we increase the collection, offering more products and more great scents to our consumers. And then at some point, you need to start really, we were always working on the branding to some extent, but then that becomes a bigger focus over the years, and making sure that you're not just a one trick pony on Meta and on Google, but you can also resonate as a brand across multiple channels. That's why Walmart reached out to us to start our partnership, because we became more of a brand. So then you start focusing on those pieces, but that comes later. for me, it's initially is to your point, it's about seeing product market fit. Is somebody gonna buy my product? And then just making sure that you get that initial traction and accelerate and do more of the same, and then then you can start working on the brand. That's been my roadmap. People might think differently, but that's what I found worked well for me.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting point that you've made. Could you just walk us through the journey from turning the business from product to brand? What did you do? What was the change in marketing and the change in the strategy that made Dossier a brand?
You know, it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't like all of a sudden magically we went from, this company that sells perfume to this great brand. That's not, it was really work every single day. And that's what I tell, the people around us. It's not going to magically happen overnight. We need to work at this every single day. So gradually the website became nicer. The visuals became better because we have more budget. Lo and behold, when you have more budget, you can do nicer things. So, it's always the same thing. So, the photo shoots became nicer. The label on the bottle became more elegant. The packaging became nicer. It's really progressive work, in terms of trying to improve every single touch point for the customer. And, the ads went from very direct response ads to more like, okay, nice, still making sure that the customer is incentivized to buy, but more nicer visuals. We started doing, that's down the road. So after a couple of years, we started doing events like Stagecoach, and we invited a bunch of influencers there in a branded house. So, but that comes down the road, and that's just a work in progress every single day. We launched a couple of great collaborations with some influencer celebrities. So, for example, we just launched Aaliyah's perfume a week ago, and we built quite a bit of inventory for her, and we thought it'd be good for a couple months. But lo and behold, the whole inventory sold out in less than 24 hours. So, that's how, the result of that brand, that collab, that's how you start building the brand. It's not just one thing. It's a gradual a bunch of steps that lead you there. And we're still working on it today. I still don't think the brand is where it should be. And we're still working on it. A big thing for us is, as I mentioned to you, the collabs we're doing. We're doing Machine Gun Kelly, that his perfume is coming out. We're doing a collab with him, and his perfume is coming out early October. So it's continuous work on every single touch point, including the product. Um, yeah, and we're still not there yet.
And looking back at this journey, what would you say has been the single largest growth driver for the business?
It's a good question. I think it's really been because the company goes through different steps, as I
Right.
mentioned to you in the
Yeah.
beginning. Initially, it's all about that initial traction, product market fit, initial traction. But I still think, I'm coming back to my initial point. Basics work. And I think just being smart about advertising on Meta and making sure that we work with the right influencers, and we do influence marketing well, that's been the key unlock for us in the beginning and even now. Obviously, now we're present in way more channels. So we're not just on Dossier.co, we're on Amazon, TikTok Shop, Walmart, Target, CVS, internationally. So the touch points become bigger, and therefore you need to adapt your marketing. But I still think the basics work well. Just focus on those to make sure that you get that initial traction and you scale up. So your traditional paid advertising marketing, and really being having a strong influencer program worked well for us.
So what I'm getting from you is that basically in the early days it was just about getting those basics right. Once you've cracked the basics, it's about just replicating that over and over again, and just slowly increasing the touch points and just scaling up step by step, just the same thing over and over again, and just obviously getting better at it as you grow bigger.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. I think you nailed it. And we were talking about that transition from just scaling to becoming more of a brand. again, I'm repeating myself here, but it doesn't happen overnight. You got to go baby steps. It's not like all of a sudden you wake up and say, "Hey, I'm going to spend $2 million on this amazing brand, on this amazing campaign." That's not the way to do it. It's always gradual, and that transition is gradual, and that happens down the road. But yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly it.
I'm definitely thinking there are going to be a lot of people that have probably come onto this podcast hoping that there was some, silver bullet or there some shiny object that you're going to throw at them. But this is the honest truth, right? It's the
Yeah.
hard work, hustle, and grind, and just getting better at it every day, and just getting better at the basics that actually bring you to where you are. Looking back at your journey, if you had to, start over again, what would you say? What would be some of the things that you wouldn't do, or what would you focus on more looking at back at your journey?
Couple things. I do want to react to what you just said because I'm a firm believer in that. Basics work. There's no, I call that, you call it silver bullet. I call that shiny new object, or shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh, there's this cool thing and it's going to completely transform my business. You do one weird trick and all of a sudden you become a gazillionaire. That's not how it works. It's just day by day, focus on the basics, making sure you got a great product and scale. Anyway, to come back to your initial question, what would I have done differently? A couple of things that I think we talked about initially is adjusting the collection a bit better. I think that more largely, if I were to give a tip to any starting entrepreneur, is that, as I told you, I'm extremely focused on the margins, and that's something that's important to me. The unit economics matter because that's how you make money. I always say, if you don't make money, it's not a business, it's a hobby. So you need to make sure that you can pay the bills. Um, but the one thing, fuck, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Can I do this again?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Can you ask me the question again, please? Or run it done differently. That's right. Can you ask me the question again?
Oh, yeah. So the question was basically, if you had to start over again, looking back at the
Yep.
journey, what would be some of the things that you feel you shouldn't be doing, and what are some of the things that you should be doubling down on?
Yep. No, I just wanted to react real quick to what you said. I'm a firm believer in what you just said. You know, there's no silver bullet. I call it shiny object syndrome. Like, oh my God, this is a really cool thing, and all of a sudden my business is gonna go times 10. That doesn't exist. You got to focus on a great product and scale it day by day. What would I've done differently? There's a couple things. I think first of all, I would have focused on the collection a bit more and just making sure that we had the right products. But I think more importantly, now that I think of it, if there's any tip I would give to an entrepreneur is to focus on pricing. And what I mean by that is, I told you in the beginning that I'm really focused on margins. Margins are important to me. Unit economics matter a lot. You need to make sure that you have profitable unit economics. That's how you pay your bills. It's as simple as that. We always focus on the cost piece. How can I reduce my COGS? How can I ship for cheaper, faster, better? How can I get a lower CAC? But people sometimes forget that the easiest way to make money is just increase price. I mean, it's as simple as that. So I wish I would have focused on price point earlier and tested it because initially we started selling all our perfumes at 29 bucks. We really wanted to make it affordable for everybody. But turns out there was a lot of room for growth in that price point. So once we started realizing that the demand for some of our products would not change if we put the price at 39 or 49, huge unlock. I mean, massive, massive unlock because all of a sudden, you're making twice the money. So if there's a tip I would give, and I wish I had done this earlier, focus on pricing. Test your price point. You don't know what people will accept as a price point. You just don't because you've never launched this product. So try different price points and make sure that you are smart about how you A/B test your pricing and that you really increase that profit perception as much as I can. And then the third thing that's more specific to me is focus on the packaging. And what I mean by that is we started in the online world. So for us, the idea was to have a clean, elegant packaging. But your experience with us was on the website. So you knew what you're buying. Turns out when you go into wholesale, you put the simple product where there's no name of the product on it, it's kind of hard to sell. So just for me, understanding the packaging and making sure that it was adaptable earlier, both to the online world, but also the physical world, the wholesale world. I wish I'd have focused on that before.
You mentioned this a couple of times that building a business is taking it step by step and growing it from there. Just to kind of summarize a lot of the things that we've spoken about, and being a founder that scaled a business from 0 to 8 figures, could you just break down the journey in terms of, okay, here's what you should be focusing on to get to your first 100,000. Then from 100,000 to a million, this is what it is. And then, finally getting to 8 figures. If you could just break down what a founder should be focusing on at each step.
Yeah, sure. I love that question. I think initially, if I think about the roadmap that we had and the journey we had, again, you start with the product. That's table stakes. You got to have a good product. But then just focus on the basics. So have a functional Shopify website going. Use Shopify because you might remember this. I come from the Magento world, and that was a nightmare to handle. I see you nodding and smiling, so you know the pain that it could be. Start with a simple website that is easy to navigate. You can buy easily on it. In 2 clicks, you can get the product. Focus on the basics. Have some nice photos on it. Have some nice pack shots. Don't go nuts on the cost. Just make sure that you understand if people want to buy it. So that means that you need to have some sort of designer working with you, whether it's a freelancer or somebody on your staff. You need somebody to do these things for you because unless you design yourself, you're not going to be able to do that. So have a product, build a website, set up with your designer some basic ads on Meta, and really start there. That's how you get your first 10, 20,000 a month. And then you see the reaction, and then you start scaling those, and you understand your economics. Okay, is my CAC crazy, or can I make money on this down the road? So then you start doubling down on things that work. You iterate on your visuals on Meta, and then that's how you get to your first, call it, I don't know, 100,000 a month. 100,000 a month starts. It's not small. You've established something pretty cool already. So then and at the same time, you start focusing, okay, is my product the only product I'm going to be developing, or am I developing new products and launching new SKUs? So start focusing on that. That's how, let's say, you get to your first, call it, couple million a year. And then once you scale past that, if you can still keep pushing, then at some point you need to, I feel, at least in my industry, maybe it's different for other industries, start focusing on introducing newness to the customers. Unless you have a very highly repeatable product, I'm making stuff up. Toothpaste. Well, you need toothpaste. I mean, that's just the way it is. So unless you have a highly repeatable product, which we don't, I mean, people do rebuy our perfumes because they love them, but it's not an essential. Um, Unless you have that, then you need to start focusing, okay, what new products can I introduce and offer newness and innovation to your customers? And that's how you get to your, call it 20 million per year. After that, once you reach that scale and you have established your presence as a brand, then you need to start focusing on channels. I wouldn't start Amazon too early. That doesn't make sense. Start with your website. Amazon is fantastic. You can scale your business tremendously on Amazon. I'm still a believer that you start building your business on your own branded website and then you switch to Amazon. Some people think differently. That's great. Um, then you start thinking about different channels. Okay, Amazon, obviously a juggernaut. You cannot go around it. You start meeting where your customers are. Amazon's one of them. TikTok Shop is another. Then, if you're lucky enough, you start trying to work with wholesalers and trying to put your product in the physical world and see if the Walmarts, Targets, Kroger's of the world, Whole Foods, depending on your product, would like to work with you. That's the moment when you hit a lot of scalability. I was talking to a VC a couple months ago, and what the managing director said to me is like, he invests only in beauty. And what he said very specifically is that we only invest companies that obviously has shown some traction online, but have at least one wholesale contract going on. It's either going to launch or it's launched, because that's the proof point for us. So it was interesting to hear that, but that wholesaling was so important to him, and he's absolutely right. I mean, that's how you really start hitting scale. At the end of the day, online has a phenomenal penetration, but in my world at least, 70% plus of transactions happen in the physical world. So you got to be there. That's where your customers are. That's the step afterwards to start hitting the 50, 100, 200 million dollars of revenue. And by the way, that's my roadmap. I'm sure that there'll be somebody on the podcast coming up with something completely different, and that's fine. But that's, I feel, what worked well for us, and a pretty traditional route, I would say.
And my next question is going to be, you've obviously started out as a brand that was, offering uh, inspired perfumes from some of the bigger brands, right? And now you've reached a scale where, maybe in the next couple of years, you're obviously going to be as big as them. So what are the steps to get there and get next to them on the shelves?
Okay, are we gonna be as big as Cody anytime soon? No, I don't. I'd like to say yes, but we're not there yet. Um, I think the next steps, which are really important for us, is you mentioned it. We started with our impressions collection, and then we had quite a bit of scale with it, and that's something we're super proud of. We're really offering great scents that are affordable for everybody, and that's great. The next step of our journey is to start really pushing our originals collection. That's the second piece of the growth, really. So we started creating our own perfumes, our own creations. They've been doing really well. We've actually launched some of them in wholesale, and we're super happy with that. And but that's really the next step for us, is to have the dual collection. You have the impressions on one side and the originals on the other side. And ultimately, what I want people to think of is that when they want to buy a perfume, they think of Dossier first, because Dossier offers them fantastic quality, great perfume made in France at a very, very affordable price. And we have a depth of collection which is huge. And we will have something that you will like, because our collection is so wide. Whether it's the impressions or the originals, we will have something for you. So that's really, the next step for us, is being known as the perfume house for the next generation. And having customers, when they buy from us, having them feel that they made a smart move, they made a smart decision, they feel empowered, they feel more educated by the industry, and ultimately they made a smart purchase. That's what I like.
And my last question to you is going to be, if you could give one piece of advice to any of the founders that are listening to this call.
I'm going to repeat myself, and just do a recap of what I mentioned, but I'm repeating myself because I'm a real believer in this. Step by step, focus on the basics. When you launch a brand, don't think that you're going to invest 2 million bucks and all of a sudden it's going to be a miracle. I mean, some people do that, and that's great, but that's not how I feel you should be building a brand. I have a different approach. But again, focus on the basics, focus on the unit economics, because that is what is going to make or break your business. So, and then step by step, in function of the industry you're in, you will figure out how to scale, how to introduce new products, how to, scale your ads, scale your influencer program, go into wholesale. But focus on the basics, focus on the unit economics, and go step by step. And the final thing is, in terms of leadership, you know, people talk a lot about having a great team. That's table stakes. If you don't have a great team, it's going to be very difficult. People talk a lot about delegation too. I feel a little bit different about that. I'm a trust but verify kind of person. I like to be in the weeds as much as I humanly can, because I feel that's where mistakes are made and devil's in the details. So I stay in the weeds and the details of the business every single day. And I talk to the teams like 60, 70% of my time is just talking to the teams and understanding the absolute most intricate details of the business. Like yesterday, for example, I was focusing on the shipping cost of 4 containers that went to Mexico, and I was wondering why they're so expensive. And but that's the only way I feel that you can really understand your business and you can really fix the things that are not going so well. The team always does a great job, but it helps to have that senior person who has a bigger view of the company than just the team to really focus on that. So I'd say obviously think strategically and think in terms of how the brand is going to be developing, but stay in the weed as much as you can. I think that's really important.
Thank you so much for doing this, Sergio.
My pleasure.